In the wake of Newtown, a lot of things that used to be accepted as business as usual, or things that were accepted as normal cultural expressions in our country, seems to have lost that status of normalcy. There have been a whole bunch of unexpected changes in the last 24 hours, in a really wide range of different parts of American life since the Newtown school massacre. Today, for example, we woke up to news of a big move by Cerberus. Cerberus, of course, is the three-headed dog that guards the entrance to hell. Cerberus is also the name of a $20 billion private equity firm that's made a ton of profit from owning something called the Freedom Group. Cerberus's Freedom Group in recent years has been buying up many of the nation's gun companies. Cerberus has basically created a giant conglomerate gun company by buying all these individual gun manufacturers and sticking them all together as Freedom Group. Well, yesterday afternoon, former New York Governor Eliot Spitzer suggested that it might be time for major investors in Cerberus to pressure the company to get out of the gun business. Last night, one very large investor, the California Teachers Pension Fund, did start to make a move in that direction. They said they were reviewing their investment in Cerberus Capital in light of Friday's school shooting. That was late yesterday. And then at 1 a.m. Eastern, Cerberus announced it will be selling the Freedom Group, that big gun company it spent years building up. One part of the Freedom Group that Cerberus is now selling is Bushmaster, the company that manufactured the gun that Connecticut authorities say was used to kill all of the children who died in Friday's killings. Again, that announcement from Cerberus happened at 1 a.m., and that was the start of a whole day long worth of lots of other unexpected changes, apparently all precipitated by Friday's shootings. The retail chain Dick's Sporting Goods today suspended sales of modern sporting rifles, AR-15 style rifles, at all of its stores nationwide. The company also stopped sales and display of all guns at the store that's located closest to the shooting itself. Meanwhile, the nation's largest retailer of guns and ammo, Walmart, has removed from its website the description of the particular Bushmaster rifle that was used in the Newtown killings. Walmart will still sell that gun to you. You just can't view it on their website anymore. Also, a gun show planned for February in Westchester County, New York State, nearby the site of the shooting in Connecticut. That gun show has been canceled. It was due to be held at a government-owned building, and the Westchester County executive says it would be inappropriate to hold that event given what just happened in Newtown. That same annual gun show was suspended for a decade in the wake of the Columbine shooting back in 1999. It was only brought back 2 years ago in 2010. But now, after Newtown, it has been suspended again. Another gun show scheduled to start January 5th in Danbury, Connecticut, which is very nearby the shooting site. That gun show has also been canceled. The show's promoter is not as yet commenting as to why. Those were all relatively unexpected developments in the business side of the guns world today. There was also unexpected news in the political side of the guns world. Michigan's Republican governor is Rick Snyder, and today he vetoed a Republican bill that would have allowed concealed weapons inside Michigan churches, daycare centers, and schools. The bill passed through the Republican-led Michigan legislature late on the night before the killings at Newtown, literally just a few hours before that horrific scene became the center of the entire country's attention. When the bill got to his desk, Governor Snyder said right away that the Newtown massacre was weighing on his decision. He told the AP that public safety concerns had been heightened and deserved extra consideration following Friday's mass shooting. He said, quote, "What that legislation says will be looked at through the lens of all that's happened." But then Governor Snyder told a story he says he doesn't usually tell, a personal story about a shooting at his dorm back when he was a law student back in 1981. That shooter in 1981 first started a fire with Molotov cocktails. Mr. Snyder was a resident advisor in the dorm. He says he went to deal with the fire alarm while two other RAs went upstairs to where the disturbance was happening, and one of those RAs was shot and killed by the gunman. If circumstances had played out any differently, the governor says, that most likely would have been me. If you ask in context, this is something that has additional impact on me because of my personal history. And today, when that Republican bill hit his Republican governor's desk, a bill that would allow firearms into daycare centers and schools and churches, Governor Rick Snyder vetoed it. A Republican governor vetoing a Republican gun bill that came out of his own totally Republican legislature. That was maybe today's most unexpected news in the politics of guns. But it wasn't all. Also today, the governor of Colorado, Democrat John Hickenlooper, made a big move. Today, he announced a $19 million expansion and redesign of his state's mental health system. It includes a single statewide mental health crisis hotline for Colorado and 5 24/7 walk-in crisis centers across the state, and streamlined reporting of mental health commitments to gun sale registries. That news from Colorado coming in at the same time today that we learned of another multiple victim shooting. In Longmont, Colorado, a gunman killing 3 people in what appears to be a domestic violence situation before shooting and killing himself. There was also news on guns today from a very unexpected quarter of the world of sports. Jim Boeheim is the head basketball coach at Syracuse University. Last night, Jim Boeheim logged his 900th career win as a coach. That's a really big milestone. Not many people have reached that milestone in the world of sports. But in his moment of being recognized for that rare achievement, this is what Jim Boeheim talked about during his post-game press conference. Watch.
If we in this country as Americans cannot get the people that represent us to do something about firearms, we are a sad, sad society. And I'm not talking, I'm a hunter, I've hunted, I'm not talking about rifles, and that's fine. If one person in this world, NRA president, anybody can tell me why we need assault weapons with 30 shots in the thing, if one person in the world, this is our fault. This is my fault, your fault, all your faults. If we don't get out and do something about this, I saw one guy from representative I was very proud of. Somebody in his state had just come out and said that we need more guns. We don't need less. Yeah, we need to give teachers guns so they can shoot people. Yeah, that's really good thinking to do that. We can't get this thing done. I don't know what kind of country we have.
And that's how he ended his press conference. That was Syracuse head coach Jim Boeheim speaking at the press conference that was called to celebrate his 900th career win in college basketball. Yes, we have had a lot of mass shootings in this country. I am not sure we have had one that has resonated quite so acutely in so many widely different areas of American life. Further news today, believe it or not, out of Hollywood. The Los Angeles premiere of Quentin Tarantino's new movie got canceled. It's a gunfight-filled Western set just before the Civil War. Also, the music industry. The new song out from the latest album by the singer Keisha, apparently the #3 song in the country on radio before the Newtown killings, it is now being pulled from rotation at radio stations around the country in the wake of the massacre. The title of the song is Die Young. All of these changes in the way that American life and business and culture is conducted in the wake of Friday's massacre. And stacking up all of those individual, in some cases unrelated changes, just from today, is just one way of quantifying how big a shock to all different kinds of American systems this tragedy has been. And it is tragedy that tends to knock us out of our normal orbit on issues related to guns in this country. That's been true for decades. It was true in 1968 when President Lyndon Johnson signed a new gun law in the wake of the assassination of Martin Luther King and the assassination of Bobby Kennedy. After JFK, those were the second and third high-profile political assassinations in a row that led LBJ to marshal support for a new gun control act for the nation. And even then, LBJ only got half of what he wanted in that final bill.
I ask for the national registration of all guns and the licenses of those who carry those guns. For the fact of life is that there are over 160 million guns in this country. More firearms than families. And if guns are to be kept out of the hands of the criminal, and out of the hands of the insane, and out of the hands of the irresponsible, then we just must have licensing. If the criminal with a gun is to be tracked down quickly, then we must have registration in this country. The voices that blocked these safeguards were not the voices of an aroused nation. They were the voices of a powerful lobby, a gun lobby, that has prevailed for the moment in an election year. We have been through a great deal of anguish these last few months and these last few years. Too much anguish to forget so quickly. So now we must complete the task which this long-needed legislation begins. We have come a long way. We have made much progress, but not near enough.
President Lyndon Johnson, December 1968, the day he signed the Gun Control Act. He got some of what he wanted in that law, but not all. Politics around guns have always been tough. Even LBJ, the master legislator, with nothing to lose at that point, he'd already announced he was not running for re-election as president. He had all the political capital in the world coming out of this horrible series of tragedies in 1968. But even with that, he was only able to get half of what he wanted in that bill. But he did get half of what he wanted. He got a crackdown on mail-order guns. He got a crackdown on gun sales to kids and Saturday night specials. He couldn't get everything he wanted, but he did get something. And something matters. Policy matters in this field. So what is the legislative low-hanging fruit now? The U.S. Senate has already done a very small part of it, reaching for the lowest possible low-hanging fruit, unanimously passing a bill that allows federal officials to help local authorities respond to mass shootings or other violent crimes in public places. A jurisdictional thing. That's a start. That's something. But is more possible now in a changed political landscape, in a changed country? What about the issue of federal research on guns? That's not allowed right now. Back in the mid-'90s, an Arkansas Republican pushed an amendment through Congress. It's still in effect today. It strips the Centers for Disease Control budget of $2.6 million, specifically because that is the exact amount the agency had spent on gun-related research. It also outlawed further research on gun control. That's what it says in the amendment. None of the funds made available for injury prevention and control at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention may be used to advocate or promote gun control. That is still the law. Or how about allowing the government to release the information it is still allowed to compile about gun violence? Once upon a time, the ATF used to release gun crime data to the public. But starting in 2003, a Republican congressman named Todd Tiahrt from Kansas started pushing through an amendment that would prevent the ATF from releasing gun crime data to the public. Todd Tiahart's gone from Congress, but his amendment lives on. It continues to get added to spending bills every year, so we aren't allowed to know what the ATF knows about gun crime. Maybe instead of banning research on gun violence, maybe we could now allow or even encourage research on gun violence. Maybe we could make the data we do collect on gun violence more available and not less available. So far, D.C. has not been able to pass a bill renewing the lapsed ban on high-capacity ammunition magazines, not even after Jared Lee Loughner used one last year when he opened fire outside a Tucson grocery store, killing 6 people and wounding 13 others, including Congresswoman Gabby Giffords. He wasn't able to be stopped until that extended magazine ran out of bullets and he tried to reload. We've not been able to close the so-called gun show loophole, so you'd have to submit to a background check even if you buy a gun at a gun show, just like you do if you have to buy one at a store. We couldn't get that done even when the families of Columbine and Virginia Tech massacre victims put their weight behind the effort to do that a couple of years ago. But maybe this time will be different. Maybe the country has changed so much in the wake of this latest unfathomable tragedy that more unexpected things will happen, like that list of big unexpected things that happened today. President Obama has already endorsed banning assault weapons again, including those high-capacity magazines. He's also endorsed closing the gun show loophole. Maybe he is reaching for what he sees now, newly, as the low-hanging fruit in gun policy. The politics on this issue are always tough. Everybody agrees on that. But if we just started with the low-hanging fruit, could there be movement on this issue? Joining us now is Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut. Senator, thank you very much for being with here tonight at a difficult time.
Thank you.
Let me start by asking if you do think the political environment has shifted on this issue because of what happened in your state, that there is a new political reality in Washington.
I think there is a new political reality, but really a seismic, almost tectonic shift in the public awareness of this issue and the political sense that something must be done. That's what I hear constantly, and I've spent 3 or more days in Newtown, Connecticut, with the community there that's coming together and seeking to heal and expressing its grief. But again and again and again, law enforcement officials, people across Connecticut, and I think across the country, are saying we need to do something. And that's reflected in some of the developments that you've just cited. And I think in some of the expressions on the part of some of my colleagues in the Senate, privately as well as publicly. I've spoken to some of my Republican colleagues who came to me after we did a vigil just last night with interest in what can be done, the common sense, common ground that we can seek together. But it's never been a politically safe issue. It's going to be a tough one, and I'm committed to stay with it. I hope the American people are.
When people have seen through previous eras in Washington, seen through gun control measures that seemed difficult but eventually got done, one of the things they talk about is timing, particularly when the public is galvanized or because of an issue like this, because of an incident like this. Does that mean that there should be something put forward, even if it isn't the most comprehensive change in the world, in a way that it could be done quickly during the lame duck session, something that could be done fast so that something else could be done more in the future?
There's a great deal of focus, I need not tell you, on the fiscal cliff, some of the issues that were so much on people's minds even before this horrific tragedy that has galvanized public opinion. Whether there's time in the next 2 weeks remains to be seen. Certainly there are active efforts underway. The ban on assault weapons is being written now as we speak. My staff and others are involved. Dianne Feinstein, who's been such a leader on this issue, and others are taking the lead. The high-capacity magazines certainly could be part of that measure, and increased background checks. Only 60% of all the sales now involve those background checks, and they could be improved, perhaps administratively, without additional legislation. And mental health efforts, funds and support for law enforcement so that they can better do their job. All of them are feasible and achievable, whether in the next 2 weeks or in the next 2 weeks or the first 2 weeks of the new Congress, when I hope we can continue to move forward and build on this moment. We need to seize this moment. It is one that comes rarely in American political life, when the political stars are aligned in a way that makes progress possible. But again, the American people are key to this effort, and your viewers and everyone involved in forming public opinion, I think, has a responsibility to continue talking about it, continue to raise public consciousness, and talk about what it means to have an assault weapon, how this killer was able to blast his way into the school with multiple 30-round clips and then use a weapon that was designed only to kill and maim people, not for hunting, not for recreation or competitive sport, but to kill and maim people at war. It's a military-style weapon, and that kind of reality, I think, needs to be brought home.
Senator Blumenthal, I know that time is short. You were on your way back to Connecticut. I know you've been in the state a lot since the incident happened. Do you feel, briefly, that Connecticut is getting the support that it needs, the resources that it needs from the federal government and from any other aspect of the nation that you need to be tapping here beyond just our sympathy and our prayers?
There's been an outpouring across the nation, and Newtown, you know, is a very strong, resolute, resilient community bound by faith, and the president's visit Sunday night, I think, reflected feelings of the American people. He was very powerful and moving at the vigil that evening, and Newtown has been supported because we know America is with Newtown, and everywhere I go, again, people are expressing their grief and their sympathies. I will be back in Connecticut for the next of a number of funerals that I have attended, as well as the 3 days, and I will live forever with the sights and sounds of the cries of anguish and grief of parents who emerged from that Sandy Hook firehouse, knowing on Friday early evening that they would never see their babies, beautiful children who went to school that day, ready to build ginger men and learn their ABCs. The brutality of this crime on children so young, I think, has touched something very deep and profound in America, and I hope we can seize this moment.
Senator Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut, thank you so much for your time tonight, sir. Good luck. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we got lots more ahead. Stay with us.